All right, here we are in the 49ers endgame. What is going on, everyone? It is Dylan Lasagna. Welcome to another episode of Very Cold Lasagna, the podcast that houses a safe and open listening platform for casual, cold, and even the dumbest takes on the world of WWE, AEW, the NFL, and the wide world of pro wrestling and sports in general. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna. Welcome to today's episode number 78 of this freezing cold podcast. And well, here we are. 2 games left. 2 games to discuss, 1 to recap, 1 to preview for my San Francisco 49ers as their season is about to come to a close. Yes, it is. And man, I gotta tell you, when I do this season recap for the 49ers in 2021, it's gonna be something. And probably even more something than last year when I did their season recap for that injury-filled season in 2020. But obviously, when the time comes to recap their season, man, that's going to be something. But today, we're here to discuss more pressing matters because we're here to discuss the here and the now. Because today, we're going to be talking about the 49ers and their Week 17 matchup against the Houston Texans, their last home game of the season, before they head out to Week 18, which we'll discuss later on, as they head out to Los Angeles to take on the LA Rams in a win-or-go-home matchup. And it's going to be an interesting one because there are so many question marks regarding this matchup, and there's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to that. So later on, we're going to be talking about and previewing that Week 18 matchup in LA against the Rams. But for now, let's first talk about Week 17. You know, going into this final home game of the season, it's the last one. Everyone gets to see Levi's one last time. You're facing off against a on record bad opponent in the Houston Texans, but last week in the previous week, the Niners were coming off a bad loss to the Texans' division rivals, the Tennessee Titans, where Jimmy Garoppolo just was not good in that game overall. He had 2 interceptions, and his throws were pretty bad, pretty much typical Jimmy garbage fail. However, a lot of that was attributed to a injury he suffered during that game, where he took a Suplex City Field sack, where he was sacked and then somehow, some way, he injured his right thumb, and I guess that kind of affected his throwing motion, and as such, he was not able to play this game. So enter Trey Lance, and he eventually was named the starter after like a week, days filled speculation and silence from Kyle Shanahan on who would be the starter. So that was pretty much the lead up to this game. Meanwhile, for the Houston Texans, they were coming off a big upset win over the LA Clippers. Oh, sorry, this is not basketball, this is football. But either way, they are still the LA Clippers, aka the Chargers, the Frogers. So Davis Mills and Brandon Cooks pretty much, and Rex Burkhead pretty much torched the Chargers whack asses all over NRG Stadium in week 16, 41-29. So that was something, probably one of the bigger victories of their big terrible season. So for the Texans, their season was pretty much all but over with already, but they were playing the spoiler role pretty well, and the spoiler role was pretty much effective in Week 16 against the Chargers. For the 49ers, they're still alive and well in the NFC wildcard race, but losing to the Tennessee Titans on a Thursday night didn't really help matters because, well, the Philadelphia Eagles also won in their Week 16 matchup, but you did get a little bit of help. The Saints managed to lose their matchup, and I think Washington also got destroyed. But you're kind of like on the frisk of nearing and endearing playoff elimination by other means. So Niners nonetheless still had something to play for in their final home game of the season in Week 17 against the Houston Texans. You even had a chance to clinch a playoff spot, even though you lost the previous week. You had to take care of business, of course, and then you had to hope the Sam Darnold-led Carolina Panthers take care of business against the New Orleans Saints on the road, which, well, they didn't. And well, you also had the fact that the Philadelphia Eagles had already won earlier in the day, and you got a little bit of help with the Atlanta Falcons and the Washington football team already being eliminated earlier on by losing their respective games. So we get to this game with the Houston Texans. Obviously, we all know by now, Trey Lance already starting this game. And, his first 2 drives were just pretty much like the Arizona game back in week 5. A lot of running plays, a lot of QB scrambles, a lot of designed runs called by Kyle Shanahan. And I'm just thinking to myself, oh man, is this going to be the entire game? Is this going to be the entire conservative offense that Kyle Shanahan did back in week 5 against the then 5-0 Arizona Cardinals? And when the defense was playing so well in that game, the Kyle Shanahan was pretty much playing this conservative approach by not letting Trey throw the ball as much. So we're going to get that here. And he continued to force it down our throats, even when the Houston Texans, for as bad as their defense is, they were able to read that shit the whole way through. And yeah, Kyle Shanahan kept going with it. And when the Texans kept continuing to go through with it, they kept reading through it. Kyle should have known by that point that he should have stopped using Trey Lance like Lamar Jackson. So fortunately for the Niners, in their first 2 drives where it just went absolutely nowhere, the defense was just fortunate to hold down the fort because, well, David Culley, the head coach for the Houston Texans, was just as conservative as Kyle Shanahan in the opening proceedings. He was calling a bunch of short passes and gap runs for Davis Mills and Rex Burkhead. Brandon Cooks hasn't settled in quite yet, but overall, both offenses were pretty conservative to start this game. Now, there was a questionable call on 4th down in the first quarter that I did not understand at all. When on the first 4th down in the second drive, where Kyle Shanahan called a QB sneak, which Trey Lance got, but then when they went for another 4th down past midfield, when they could have gotten to the red zone, I don't understand this one, because instead of trying to have Trey Lance sneak it on another 4th and 1, they decided to have the returning Elijah Mitchell, their rookie running back, try to run it on the side. Trey Lance tossed it to Elijah Mitchell to the side, but he predictably and typically got stopped by the defense for a loss. My God, this offense was just going nowhere to start this game. But, at least it became clear that Kyle Shanahan, he needed to start dialing up some passes for Trey from that point onward. And, he finally did so. Once the Niners got the ball back in the second quarter, they had their first promising drive of the game. Trey Lance started to throw more, thanks to Kyle Shanahan finally opening up the playbook a little bit. But unfortunately, their promising drive, their most promising one so far of the game, it got a little bit derailed. Like, the right side of the offensive line hasn't been doing too hot in these last couple of games. Literally, I don't know what the issue is, because they can't block for shit. I don't know why. So right tackle Daniel Brunskill, for example, he just gets completely dominated by the Texans pass rush. Yes, the Texans pass rush. And Trey Lance just ate a big ass sack that just derailed another drive in the second quarter. So again, fortunately for the defense, they were continuing to pick up the slack for the offense. And, there were a couple of big plays to prevent the Texans from, making any progress. For example, Ambry Thomas nearly got a pick 6 on Davis Mills at midfield. He undercut Nico Collins. It was a nice undercut. And, had Ambry Thomas undercut it just a little more, and, had he got a little bit more control of the ball, man, he would have been speeding past everybody, and he got gotten that pick 6. But, it was a good pass breakup right then and there. Problem is, the offense still wasn't doing shit midway in the second quarter because Trey Lance threw just a bad interception to Desmond King. This was not on the offensive line. This was not on the receivers. This was all on Trey Lance. And, it happens. It happens. if it was a Jimmy Garoppolo interception, of course, I'm going to rat on his ass. But for Trey, this is just his second game. And, in time, he'll learn to find the open receiver. But what he did here, when he threw that interception in the second quarter, was that instead of trying to find the open receiver, which was Deebo Samuel, he instead decided to throw it to George Kittle in double coverage. And guess who was there when he threw it to George Kittle? Desmond King, the corner for the Houston Texans. And there's also happened to be another Texans corner defensive back in that area that could have also picked off the ball from Trey Lance. So, Trey still has that tendency to lock on to one specific receiver, kind of like, Colin Kaepernick did back in the day. So hopefully, in time, Trey Lance will learn to find multiple guys around the offense, and then when he finds the open man, zone in on him. So the Texans were able to take advantage of this interception, rookie mistake. But unfortunately, the defense caved into the Texans taking advantage of this, because Brandon Cooks was on a one-man wrecking crew. He torched both K'Wan Williams twice and Fred Warner in the end zone for the first touchdown of the game to take the first lead 7-0. To be honest with you, on that touchdown by Brandon Cooks, I thought he pushed off Fred Warner, and I'm a little surprised the referees didn't arrest Brandon Cooks for offensive pass interference. You can arrest the 49ers defense so much for committing the crimes of defensive pass interference, yet you can't arrest Brandon Cooks for a little push off on Fred Warner. I'm like, what? Okay. So anyway, the Niners still can't do anything on offense. Nothing's working. Not even trying to make Deebo Samuel a runner. So again, nothing is working for this Niners offense. And by this point, I'm like, shit. Are we really gonna? Is this really gonna happen to us against this Houston Texans team? Really? This is really what's gonna come down to. But momentum slowly starts to pick up thanks to the defense again. They finally they take down Davis Mills, Eric Armstead, Samson Mbukum team up, do a nice double team to sack Davis Mills and force a 3-and-out. And going to the half, the Niners put on a decent 2-minute drill, and Kyle Shanahan, for once, finally let Trey try out his mid-range passing game. He netted 3 nice throws to Deebo, 2 of them to Deebo, and 1 to Brandon Ayuk. And Ayuk, he managed to catch a would-be interception. It seemed to look like it's going to be intercepted by one of the Texans defensive backs, but Ayuk made this nice catch to prevent it from going out of bounds, and he hauled it back in so he can count it as a catch. That's pretty cool. That was pretty cool. So that catch by Ayuk, he caught it, then ran out of bounds, and then with the seconds remaining, Robbie Gould came out, set up the field goal, 7-3. And you know what? I mean, the Texans, they weren't doing great on offense, but the Niners were not doing any favors for themselves on offense as well. And they were for the rookie mistakes that Trey Lance was making, the rest of the team was just not helping them out either. They were either getting too conservative, especially Kyle Shanahan, or they were getting too cute all first half long. The failed QB draws, at least he finally woke up Kyle Shanahan into letting Trey Lance throw the ball more. And, the play calls that he did dial up, some of them weren't really helpful for Trey, such as, trying to call Deebo Samuel run plays right after the Texans got a touchdown, or trying to let Elijah Mitchell go for it on 4th down early in the game. Instead of trying to run it in the middle, they tried to run it through the sides. For as much as I bash on the Niners for running it in the middle so much, this was the time. That was the time where you shouldn't have run it on the side. But anyway, Trey had his rookie mishaps in this first half, but the execution of the entire offense, especially the play calling, the team had to help him out. This was only his second game, and they were having all this talk about him improving in practice, but the execution on the field of him improving hasn't really shown in one half. So were we going to see much of the same in the third quarter and the rest of the game? Well, it's pretty much like that for 2 plays. But we finally got to see a little bit of what the Niners offense could be like under Trey Lance going forward. Trey Lance gets a big pass to Ayuk, and Ayuk races down the sideline for 40 yards. And even though they don't convert 4th down again, hey, they're starting to pick up some steam. And the Texans helped them out too, because Davis Mills threw an interception to linebacker Marcel Harris, and he ran that thing back, and I swear to God, I thought the officials were going to be like, oh no, we're giving the ball back to the Texans, because it was very clear that Marcel Harris dropped that ball. He fumbled that ball, and the Texans were on it, but the officials bailed his ass out because he ruled that forward progress was stopped, so they bailed his ass out there. So ref ball, for once, actually played nice. They were actually playing nice. So from that point forward, it was pretty much all Niners. The offense began to hit their stride. Trey Lance leads the first touchdown of the game. He gets a methodical drive in. You see some nice passes going. And Elijah Mitchell starts to pick up steam. He gets the first touchdown of the game too. And the Niners take a 10-7 lead. And much later on, the Texans get the ball back. And this is their first decent drive of the game since the first touchdown of the game for the Texans. But this is where things were getting a little spicy on defense, because Josh Norman, everyone's favorite defensive back, Josh Norman, was getting absolutely roasted by Brandon Cooks. Yes, Brandon Cooks was absolutely torching the Niners secondary in the closing portions of the third quarter, because Josh Norman can't cover for shit, and he's so bad at his job, he's so washed as fuck, that he was once again taken to jail. He was taken to officiating jail for committing the crime of pass interference, because he can't cover anyone anymore. So he finally gets benched by Shanahan, and here comes Dante Johnson, the reserve corner. And while he gets taken to officiating jail too, I mean, he doesn't do as bad as Josh Norman the rest of the way. So the Texans, they get back into field goal range, but 3 possessions later, three plays later, they don't get anything out of it. They don't get into the end zone, and they're forced to settle for a field goal. And fortunately for the Niners, Kaimi Fairbairn missed it. It was gonna go straight in, but then it curved at the last moment. So, in spite of everything that happened on this certain possession, the Texans offense was really falling apart. And the defense, especially the defensive line, was putting a lot of heavy pressure to make that happen, to force Davis Mills to get that ball out really quick, and if not at all. So we get to the fourth quarter. Trey Lance, for much of this final quarter, he began to settle in. Kyle Shanahan finally dialed up some nice plays for him to unleash his potential against a terrible Texans team. He found Deebo Samuel for a nice 45-yarder to extend the Niners lead 17-7. And George Kittle, who was quiet all game long, he hauled in a sexy throw from Trey Lance, one-handed, to keep San Francisco possession a couple minutes later going, and it set up another field goal, 20-7, and it was pretty much already over by then because the Texans couldn't really do anything, and they were able to stop them again, and the final score ended up being 23-7. So, rough first half, better second half for the 49ers in this game. The one turnover to Davis Mills, it not only just shifted the momentum, but it finally saw the light for Kyle Shanahan to take off the training wheels, at least for this game, off of Trey Lance. Kyle Shanahan let him get loose on play action passes. And he let him roll out of the pocket. He let him showcase his arm talent, which he absolutely needs to do. It makes you wonder, why didn't Kyle Shanahan go to him earlier in the season when he kept steadfast at Jimmy Garoppolo? Like, what were we waiting for here? I mean, I get it. Trey Lance still has a lot of things to work on, but there's so much that can be accomplished with Trey Lance. He could have won a couple more games here, but either way, the more aggressive approach really showed the potential of what this offense can be with Trey Lance under center come next year. If Shanahan, lets him be this leader, this leader of men. The defense though, I mean, for as much as I praise Trey Lance, I think he did a good job here. The defense was the real star of the show. They only gave up that one touchdown to Brandon Cooks, and they gave a couple other pass interference calls, mainly Josh Norman. They didn't let Davis Mills in the offense go anywhere, nowhere whatsoever. And this was despite Nick Bosa getting doubled by the offensive line. So you got to give a lot of credit to the interior defensive line, Eric Armstead, Arden Key, Jordan Willis. They were creating a lot of pressure inside, and they were getting to Davis Mills in more ways than one. And, Nick Bosa was doing his part too, but I mean, sure, he didn't get to the quarterback, but he was doing his role as well. So overall, it was a good win for the Niners. Sure, they struggled in the first half, but once Kyle Shanahan finally took off the training wheels, let Trey Lance ride the big boy bike, the Niners, finally rolled the dice, and it paid off with Trey Lance, at least in this game. Now, obviously, a lot of questions have to be answered heading into this matchup against the LA Rams in the season finale, but still, this was kind of like a preview of what's to come next season with Trey Lance as the possibly full-on starter. Now, in terms of, this turnaround between Week 17 and Week 18, the Niners got what they wanted, and they got what they needed in terms of playoffs. Obviously, they didn't get the exact thing they needed with the Panthers losing to the Saints because Sam Darnold is stupid as fuck. But, progress for as much as I'm against a backdoor appearance into the postseason. So, really quick, let's talk some winners and losers of this Week 17 game. Trey Lance, a lot of first half play that saw him do a lot of designed runs that were pretty unsuccessful. Came under Kyle Shanahan, but he had his own mistake in that underthrown ball that resulted in an interception. But again, Trey Lance slowly and surely hit his stride. He threw the ball deeper downfield, showcased his arm talent, and pretty much when Trey Lance throws it more, you dial up more passing plays than run plays, and then you balance it out all together, this offense plays so much better. It just plays so much better. So obviously there's some things that Trey Lance needs to work on, like his progressions, trying to find the open guy instead of trying to lock onto one particular person, and his tendency to run out of the pocket when clearly there hasn't been enough pressure around him. So there's still some things to correct, and once he corrects those things, get some practice in the offseason, he'll have a great year too. His year two will have so much potential. The defensive line, perhaps one of their best games of the season, and again, Nick Bosa wasn't mentioned much in this game, and again, that interior pressure created by Armstead, Key, and Willis made Davis Mills nervous and his life a living hell in that game. Now for the losers, Josh Norman. finally, he got benched for being a washed ass fuck, and he's the prime example of bench city. His ass got beat again, this time on an underthrown deep shot to Brandon Cooks, and finally, that was enough for Kyle Shanahan to bench his ass and put in Dante Johnson. And again, he managed to get better as the game went on. But, you know, unfortunately, Josh Norman is here to stay for one more game. Unfortunately. The right side of the offensive line, I'm not sure why. They're continuing to allow opposing pass rushers to get around that right side. Daniel Brunskill and Tom Compton have not been doing a good job protecting the quarterback, whether it's Jimmy G or Trey Lance in these two games. But either way, this was not a particularly well performance this Sunday. So the offensive line, it's been kind of a hit or miss these last 2 weeks. Some takeaways from this game, you know. I do believe that when the time comes for next season, Trey Lance is going to be something. You know, when Kyle Shanahan eventually hands Trey the keys to the car, Jimmy Garoppolo is somewhere else. It'll be a little shaky at first. But it'll soon be full speed ahead. They'll be pedal to the metal on offense. What we saw on Sunday was just a glimpse of, you know, the offense being more alive than ever when Trey throws those mid-range passes and even the deep ball, for example, to Kittle and Debo. You know, this offense is going to be something else, especially when you balance the passing game and the running game. Both of them are so good to mesh together. This offense is going to be hard to stop. And when you finally get a good defense in, a good secondary, good corners, oh man, this team is going to be hard to stop. Now, you know, Trey, again, still has things to work on. But if the Niners develop him right, Trey gets some work in with Shanahan in the offseason, good things can finally come their way. You know, if the Niners make the playoffs, though, this defense is gonna get roasted. It's going to get roasted. If they have a hard time covering no-name guys, imagine having a hard time limiting opposing offense's top receivers, even if it's just one. Like, if getting torched by AJ Brown or Brandon Cooks, one receiver, was bad enough, imagine what it'll be like getting torched by multiple in Cooper Kupp, in Odell Beckham on Sunday, or if you make it in the first round, whether it's to CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper if you face Dallas, or the litany of Tampa receivers, even if they're all banged up. And Mike Evans, Tyler Johnson, Cameron Brate, Gronk. No matter what, it's like this secondary is primed to get whacked. It's primed to get burned in the postseason. Like, no questions about it. And, you know, heading into this Week 18 matchup against the LA Rams, you know, Kyle Shanahan is saddled with a interesting decision to make for the season finale. You know, in relief of Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance performed pretty admirably in the second half. Again, you know, it's not to say that Trey Lance didn't do a good job in the game overall. It's just that, are you gonna put him in a spot to win this game against a LA Rams team that still has to play to win the division? And again, obviously the Niners have to treat this like a playoff game. And again, this could be a good experience for Trey Lance. But at the same time, what's the deal with Jimmy G? And sure, he's been getting healthier. He's been practicing. So what gives Kyle Shanahan the best chance to win? In, again, I'm very against the backdoor appearance, but, you know, speaking, you know, a little fairly, I guess we do that here on this show. You gotta give it another perspective here. What gives him the best chance what gives him the best chance to win this game on Sunday? Do you go with your old reliable Jimmy G, give him one last rodeo before they ship his ass out of San Francisco? Or do you play it safe with Jimmy in his thumb injury because you don't know what he'll be like on Sunday, but you're also taking a huge ass risk in starting the unknown in Trey Lance in a playoff caliber game? So an interesting decision that Kyle Shanahan is going to make come game time. And it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting. So speaking of that playoff caliber game, let's talk about it. 49ers, Rams, Week 18 in Los Angeles. The Niners, last time they were in LA, even if it was a preseason game, against the Chargers, they showed out. And even the last time where they were playing the Rams in LA in the Coliseum in 2019, they showed out. It was pretty much a 50-50 split of Rams fans and Niners fans in LA. So I imagine the same thing is going to happen here. And what better way to have a Rams and Niners game with the one and only Joe Buck and Troy Aikman on the call. Yeah, that's real Niners football right there. So anyway, this is a pretty much big matchup for both teams right here. This is kind of like the prelude to the playoffs. It's like I don't know, I guess you could call it the WrestleMania kickoff to the WrestleMania. I guess you could call it that. Because for the Niners, it's win or go home. For the Rams, you win, you get the NFC West. So both teams are playing for something here in this matchup. Because if the Niners don't win here, the Saints have an opportunity to nab their playoff spot. And if the Rams don't win here, well, the Cardinals have an opportunity at home to clinch the division over the Seahawks. So a lot on the line in this Week 18, this season finale matchup in Los Angeles. Now, last week, for the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo did not play after suffering a thumb injury in Week 16 in Tennessee against the Titans. So Kyle Shanahan was forced to start his rookie quarterback in Trey Lance against the Houston Texans. So despite a sluggish first half, Kyle Shanahan finally got Trey Lance comfortable, and Lance got comfortable, airing it out, showcasing his arm talent, as he led his team to a 23-7 victory, and Trey Lance got his first NFL victory in relief of Jimmy G. Unfortunately, though, the Niners had an opportunity to clinch a playoff spot, but the Panthers and Sam Darnold are so bad at this point of the season that the Saints were able to beat them unconvincingly. The Saints themselves are not a good offense at the moment. So the Niners couldn't clinch their delusional playoff spot and now have to win in LA to fend off the Saints. Meanwhile, for the Rams, they rallied back from a 19-7 fourth quarter deficit to defeat the beaten-up Baltimore Ravens in their last road trip of the season. And this was despite Matthew Stafford having a multi-turnover game again. So this is a little concerning for the Rams heading into the postseason. So both of these teams, as NFC West rivals, they met back in Week 10 on Monday Night Football in a game where I predicted it was going to be a massacre because the Rams just added Odell Beckham Jr., even though they lost their other receiver, Robert Woods, for the season. And, they had all the momentum going for them, despite a week ago, during that time, they lost to the Tennessee Titans, and they were angry as hell to take some of that anger and frustration on the beaten up 49ers. But the massacre went the other way around. For a team that went 3-5 since Week 2, and they only beat the Bears. Yes, Bears football in Week 8. A beatdown occurred by the 49ers committing that massacre on the LA Rams at home in Week 10, and that marked the beginning of their second half turnaround in a game that saw a total team effort, that saw the 49ers defense completely dismantle Matthew Stafford, and the offense completely burn Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey with short dink and dunk throws by Jimmy Garoppolo and their run-first, ball control, ball-hogging offense as they went on to beat the Rams 31-10. So, yeah, it was their beginning of their little push to a delusional backdoor appearance into the playoffs. Now, again, I've been saying this for weeks. If they make the playoffs, they better be on Nickelodeon. I don't want you all complaining about, oh, why are they getting smashed on Nickelodeon? Well, like, you all wanted this. You all wanted this. And this is going to be the little, like, capper on the top. Jimmy G getting the MVP if they make the postseason and they're on Nickelodeon. So, for the LA Rams, you know, after that Week 11 matchup, they took the bye in Week 11, after that Monday night matchup. The Rams went on to lose their next matchup against the Green Bay Packers. Now, that kind of turned out to be a little costly loss for the Rams, and Matthew Stafford had another game-changing pick six in that game, but that was the last game they would lose for the time being, because they wanted to win the rest of their games leading up to this matchup, including the ones against the Jaguars, Arizona, Seahawks, and the Vikings. So they pretty much like went on a little winning streak of sorts against, I guess you could say, a bunch of like either beating up teams or, you know, like, if I guess for the most part in terms of Arizona, like a little slumpy teams. But the biggest concern, despite, you know, them on this winning streak, is how Matthew Stafford has been turning the ball over. He's been turning it over so consistently that he's been averaging 2 interceptions per game since week 15. Now, they've been able to overcome this issue, but it can become a bigger problem come playoff time. But nonetheless, they've been able to overcome that, you know, and get these victories. But again, these are issues that the Rams can face if they face like a Tampa or a Dallas come playoff time. Now, receiver Cooper Kupp has been having an incredible season. He's been having a much better season with Matthew Stafford than he's ever had with Jared Goff. Now, he's been the offensive MVP for the Rams, and he's pretty much been Stafford's go-to receiver. And Odell Beckham Jr., since week 10, in that first matchup against the 49ers, you know, he's slowly integrating himself into this team. He's been getting much better. And he's been not as targeted as Cooper Kupp, but when he's targeted, he reaps the benefits from Matthew Stafford. So, and the offense has been playing pretty well. He's playing pretty well. Now, the defense has been solid as well. Aaron Donald and Von Miller had pretty much been a good 1-2 punch for the pass rush. Jalen Ramsey has pretty much been a good lockdown corner against opposing receivers. Unfortunately, the rest of the secondary has been so-so against opposing offenses. So that's a kind of a point of attack for the Niners in this game. Again, recently, the Rams completed a 2-game road trip. They beat the Vikings 30-23 in a turnover fest by Matt Stafford and Kirk Cousins in Week 16. And they beat the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens last week in Week 17, 2019, where Odell Beckham scored the game-winning touchdown with very few seconds left. So meanwhile, for the 49ers, since that Week 10 victory against the Rams in prime time, you know, they went on their own winning streak of sorts. They went on to win 5 of 7. You know, they went on a 5-2 streak leading up to this last game in Los Angeles. You know, they would lose winnable games to the Seahawks and the Titans, but, you know, they would still get critical victories during this span over the Minnesota Vikings, the Cincinnati Bengals, the Atlanta Falcons, to keep their delusional playoff hopes alive. Week 17, though, faced a big task for them. You know, even though it was, yes, the 4-11 at the time, Houston Texans, now 4-12, because you didn't have Jimmy Garoppolo. He suffered a right thumb fracture in the Titans game, And Kyle Shanahan, again, forced to start Trey Lance. So the entire offense was kind of like in a flux. It was kind of like a repeat performance of week 5 with Trey Lance under center. But once Kyle Shanahan dialed up the playbook, he began to take off some of the training wheels for Trey Lance. Trey Lance began to do miles better when the play call started center around the play action, him rolling out of the pocket to showcase his arm talent. So it wasn't just Trey Lance that did well in this game. The defense did well against a middling yet kind of game Texans offense, but eventually the Texans offense began to falter as the game progressed, and Niners were able to pull away 23-7. So, it was a good win, but despite it, the Niners are facing a little bit of adversity heading into this game. So, aside from the QB question, much of their corners are on the COVID reserve list, including K'Wan Williams, Ambry Thomas, Dante Johnson, and Diomandre Lenoir. So it remains unclear if they're going to be able to clear COVID protocols by Sunday. If they do, great. If they don't, you're kind of fucked. So Josh Norman and some other guy from the practice squad is going to be starting and probably the only guys playing against Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham. Yeah, a recipe for disaster in the season finale. Yikes. And if they don't get Emmanuel Mosley back off IR, if they don't activate him for the season finale, even worse for them. So you have things to figure out on the COVID reserve list. You have to figure out if any of those guys. Oh, Jimmy Ward is also on the COVID reserve list, so that's great. So yeah, you have things to figure out. If any of those guys that I mentioned, Williams, Thomas, Johnson, Lenoir, Jimmy Ward, are they going to clear the COVID list and play on Sunday? Hopefully they will. But if they don't, they're kind of fucked. They are pretty fucked. But the biggest question is, who's going to start at quarterback? Jimmy Garoppolo, he couldn't play on Sunday against the Texans because of that right thumb fracture. And I guess the reports of him needing surgery were I'm not sure if they were overblown, but if they are, then what the fuck are they reporting? But I guess he's healthy enough to start this game. But the question is, will Kyle Shanahan be willing enough to do it? So if he's not, then he has to turn to Trey Lance in what will be a pseudo playoff game. So it's going to be on Kyle Shanahan to chance it with either a 50-50 Jimmy Garoppolo or a still unproven Trey Lance for this playoff caliber game. But his choice is going to be a risky one either way. So some keys to victory for both teams. For the Rams, Matt Stafford, it's simple. You got to prevent himself. He's got to prevent himself from having a turnover bonanza against a 49ers defense, whether it's against the starters or a practice squad filled secondary. Thing is, for Stafford, he's been averaging too many turnovers by this point, and if he continues to do so against a San Francisco team trotting out, whether it's the starters or this COVID reserve team, it's gonna keep San Francisco in the game. It's gonna continue to bite the Rams in the ass. If Josh Norman is gonna be starting this game, and if he does, oh boy, the Rams are gonna attack that his side of the secondary. Again, we don't know if Dante Johnson is gonna play. Actually, Johnson was not on the second. Correct me on this. He actually was not placed on the COVID reserve list. He actually suffered a stinger. Sorry about that. But if he doesn't play in this game, Josh Norman will play, sadly. So if he starts this game, despite being benched, the Rams, they should exploit this big ass weakness heavily. And the pass rush, Aaron Donald, Von Miller, they should absolutely expose the Niners' right side of the offensive line. Daniel Brunskill, not good. Tom Compton, not good. This way, it'll make Jimmy G or whoever's starting rattled, force them out of the pocket, or make a rash decision, or take a sack, or throw an interception. Make whoever's starting at QB rattled. For the 49ers, the receiving game has to fully support whoever's going to be the starting quarterback. Last time out, Jimmy G, digging and dunking to just about everybody. It can be the same way if he starts. If it's Trey Lance, every receiver needs to run the routes, get wide open. Trey Lance has to help himself out by finding the open man, like scanning the field, not just locking onto, let's say, George Kittle, for example. He has to help himself, and the receivers have to help him. It has to be a two-way street in this game. For the receivers, though, they got to space out from the Rams secondary, especially Jalen Ramsey, because he's like a headhunter in that defense. Kyle Shanahan, if Trey Lance starts this game, he absolutely cannot and should not turn Trey Lance into Lamar Jackson in this kind of spot, because for how much I think the Niners exposed the Rams the last time out, the Rams front four, their pass rush is still pretty good. It's still pretty good. More ruthless than the Houston Texans. Trying to design runs for Trey in this game like he's Lamar Jackson isn't going to work. It actually could get him hurt in this game. So if Trey Lance, again, is starting this game, do not design runs for him, please. Obviously, if you're going to use the QB sneak, sure, but do not do anything Lamar Jackson-esque. If Jimmy G is starting this game, you got to get the ball out quicker. He's not just dealing with the pass rush. He has to know from snap one, even if your offensive line is playing well, you got to get the ball out of your hands quicker. You got to dig it and dunk it very quickly. So he's got to do all he can. He's got to do all he can to get it out quickly to his receivers. And like always, they take care of the rest. Last but not least, the pass rush has got to force more turnovers out of Matthew Stafford. The strategy for offensive lines as of late has been to cover Nick Bosa by double or triple covering him. So it's up to guys like Arden Key, Jordan Willis, or Eric Armstead to generate upfront pressure onto Matthew Stafford. Get into his face early and force him into turnovers or force him into a sack. Either way, get some pressure, get some sacks, get some turnovers, get some negative plays out of the Rams. So overall, this is a playoff caliber game for both teams. Niners, it's win or go home. For the Rams, you got to win the division or you're playing on the road. So either way, this is a big spot for both of these teams. And I got to be honest with you. For as much as I think the Niners should be able to win, I don't think they can win this because of all the uncertainty that's happening with this team, with the COVID reserve list and who's going to be starting at quarterback, and for how game LA is and how much healthier they're going to be heading into this game, and also because I don't want the Niners to backdoor into the playoffs just to get smashed in the first round. I'm going with the Rams. It's better for the 49ers to not make the playoffs, get their offseason started, and again, the primary goal for any team in the season is to make the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl, not to backdoor your way into playoffs like the Chicago Bears did last season and win an MVP in Mitchell Trubisky did. But anyway, it's not the primary goal. It's the primary goal is not to backdoor your way into the playoffs onto Nickelodeon and win a slime-filled MVP award. It's to win a Super Bowl. So whether it's Jimmy G or Trey Lance starting out there, the Niners, I guess I could give them a little credit. We're trying to make this delusional backdoor push into the playoffs. But sorry to all the Niners and all the Niners fans out there. This is coming from a realistic and true. True can be subjective again, but this is as subjective as it gets. These delusions end here. These delusions, all the hope all the like craziness about a playoff push, only to get smashed. It ends here, and it's for the better. It is for the better. So if the starters for the secondary don't show up here, the Niners are clearly getting smashed here by Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham and Van Jefferson and pretty much just about everybody. But even if they do start here, they won't get as shredded. But I think the Rams is still just as good on their best day. Now, if Matthew Stafford's going to take care of the football and not commit any turnovers, and the Rams play lights out, well, they'll put out all the lights on the 49ers and their delusional playoff hopes while on their way to clinching the NFC West. So, the 49ers, their backdoor hopes into trying to get into the playoffs, I'm sorry, it ends here on Sunday. If it doesn't, well, oh man, you're gonna hear it from me. You are gonna hear it from me. And I'm gonna say right now, I demand the NFL put the Niners playoff game, if they get in, on Nickelodeon and CBS on the 1:40 time slot on Sunday, wherever the Nickelodeon game is gonna be on, because I want Jimmy G to win that MVP. He better win that MVP if the Niners make the playoffs and get smashed. They better. But anyway, that is it for that is it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. What do you think is gonna happen this Sunday in SoFi Stadium? Niners facing the LA Rams. What do you think is gonna happen? Let me know how you think it's gonna go down. And what do you think of Trey Lance's first start against the Houston Texans in Week 17? Let me know how you think that's going to go down as well. But that is it for this show. I am your host, Dylan Lasagna. Thank you for tuning in into this fine episode, recapping Week 17 for the 49ers, as well as their upcoming matchup, the season finale against the LA Rams. So thank you for tuning into today's episode. Make sure you follow everything in relation to Very Cold Lasagna, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor FM, Google Podcasts, as well as the social media on Twitter and Instagram at Very Cold Lasagna. Make sure you support the show all you can and however you can. And as always, make sure you keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Very cold in the fridge with your takes on the world of pro wrestling and sports. Icy cold, but spicy as hell, like that warm lasagna that you get out of the microwave. Anyway, everyone, until next time, until the Niners season finishes, whether it's on Sunday or in the first round, peace out.